Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to webinar 2 of the Eureka 3D Marine Seismic Survey webinar series. This webinar is about establishing the context, the scope, and the criteria of the activity. My name is Matthew Smith. I'll be talking to you about the latest progress we've made on the environmental assessments, the consultation undertaken to date, and the activity design over the next 15 to 20 minutes or so. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Eureka activity, the activity is a marine seismic survey. The proposal is to undertake the activity in the pink area that you can see on the map on the slide, just south of Geraldton and just offshore. The northern edges of that pink area there are off the coast of Dongra. It's a survey in the Perth Basin, and we're mapping, we're exploring and mapping the subsurface of the ocean floor. And the environmental impact assessments have started now, and our consultation now has been running for about two and a half months or so now. There is a description of the activity available on our website, www.eureka3dmss.com.au. But just for the benefit of the presentation, there is a 2-year window that we're currently considering. That starts on the 1st of January 2024 through to the end of 2025. And we're working out what is the best time of year to undertake this activity. And at the moment, the plan is for the survey, in terms of the vessel being on the water, will be no more than 30 days. And the maximum acquisition days we anticipate to be 21 days. As I mentioned just in the introduction, we're going through the activity design process at the moment. So the numbers of days are indicative for now, and if there are any changes, obviously we'll communicate them through the newsletters and through this webinar. As an update on where we're at with the environmental assessment process, we have now completed our preliminary screening of environmental impacts and risks. And there are 9 environmental aspects that have been identified. So an environmental aspect is the part of our activity that interacts with the environment in some way, shape or form. So on the table here, we can see the 9. The first 5, 6 of those rather are things that are planned to occur. So we have artificial light from the navigation of the vessel at night. We have the physical presence of the vessel. We have seabed disturbance potentially due to the surveying methods that we're investigating. We have some underwater sound planned to occur, some underwater sound changing the ambient levels of sound in the marine environment, and we have atmospheric emissions and planned discharges, which are typical vessel-based environmental aspects. And we have 4 unplanned aspects, so things that we actively prevent from occurring. Those include an accidental release of fuel, an accidental release of materials or waste overboard, the introduction of marine pest species, and any collisions with marine fauna. Those are things obviously we actively avoid. On the table, you can also see the extent and duration, and you can relate these back to the map on the previous slide. Now, where we say the activity planning area, that is our current planning area, and that will be narrowed or reduced based on our activity design to some extent. We don't know exactly what yet. And so this approach to looking at the extent of these impacts is where if we complete the impact assessment on the larger planning area, then when the survey that we actually do will have less of an impact than we've done as the basis for this assessment. So you can see each aspect has a predicted amount of extent, so the maximum possible extent of that aspect. And then a duration. So there's a couple there's a few things worth explaining on the duration. So either the environmental aspect is related to the full presence of the vessel there, so 30 days in the region, or it's related to related to the acquisition itself. So underwater sound, for example, is 21 days of underwater sound where we're discharging the seismic source. We have planned discharges. So these are the discharges in the marine environment from vessels. And so it's the 30 days where the vessel will be present, plus an additional day where there may be impacts associated with those discharges. And our predictions at the moment are the planned discharges, that you won't be able to detect any difference from those discharges beyond the 30 days plus an additional day. In the case of accidental release of fuel, this is diesel oil that the vessel will be running on. And so while the vessel's present for 30 days, if there were to be an accidental release of fuel, we add 7 days, which is the predicted effect of oil, and the diesel weathering in the marine environment would last for an additional 7 days while the evaporation and dispersion of that oil takes place. So that's a little bit of a summary about our preliminary environmental impact assessment work that we've done, and more information is available on the website. I mentioned at the start that we're establishing the context for this activity, and we're also establishing the criteria for the assessment. And so it's good practice to share with the community the criteria that we'll use for judging whether or not the impacts that we predict from the Eureka survey will be below an acceptable level, which is the standard that we have to meet under the legislation that we're operating at, and that's the requirement for the environment plan that we're writing. I won't go through all of these in the slide, but for those of you, you can take a screenshot or you can pause the presentation and have a read through these proposed acceptable levels. And if you have any concerns, this is the time to raise those before we start the assessment processes in full and predict our levels of impact for comparison with these acceptable levels. And if there's things that you don't agree with or you think need to be changed, then we're certainly open to those things. This will be a subject of our consultation with affected parties, so with relevant persons throughout that consultation process. Talking a bit more about that consultation process, the process is still open. You can have your say either directly calling us. We have a dedicated hotline. We have a dedicated email address. We have a dedicated website, which I previously mentioned. It's up on the screen. And we really do want to hear from you. The process is a 5-month process, and we've now completed 2 of those months, where we started raising awareness in February. We've started to do our sort of establishing the context work by inviting comment, and we've started meeting with affected persons, mostly fishers at the moment. And we had a great visit up to the Lobster Shack and had a wonderful lunch and a good meeting with the folks there and the associated business there, the rock lobster processing facility. We had a tour of the facility, which was fantastic to understand the way that business works, and the effect that we potentially have on it from our survey. And our visits will continue as we move through April. We've heard loud and clear from the fishers that the lead into Easter is a very busy period. So we'll take some time and give some space to those folks, and then we'll be back out in the community in late April and publishing more information at that time, along with then organising some visits along the coastline there, likely to be in May at this stage. So for April, our environmental assessment work really now kind of ramps up. So we'll be following a set procedure which is aligned with ISO 31000, which is again best practice environmental management, and we'll follow that process and publish that process shortly. And then subsequently in May, when we've done the preliminary work and we've followed these processes, we'll be in a position to publish summaries of these chapters for again to aid in the consultation work, but also for people to study and digest in a bit more detail. The subsequent processes that happen in May and June will be for us to discuss our mitigation and management measures. These include the final activity design parameters. They include setting parts of our management system up so that we manage the ongoing relationship with fishers in the right way. They also include specific control measures, so systems, practices, control, so equipment and other procedures that actually are the basis of environmental management, so something tangible that actually prevents an impact or a risk from occurring. And so we'll consult on that in May, and the intention at the moment is to publish the full EP, if not the full EP, very close to the full EP. And obviously the document, actually I should clarify, is a draft environment plan because it's not gone into the regulator at the moment. And the reason we publish that in draft format is that it gives the community the opportunity throughout the whole of June to have a look at that document and digest as much as you want in the level of detail that you want and raise any objections and claims. So that's what happens in June, and we'll be out in the community again, looking to listen to feedback and adapt our activity and our control measures to suit the feedback that we receive. So what have we done so far? The work done so far is that we've completed an awful lot of consultation. Is really where we've put a lot of our effort. Some of this is a carryover from the last webinar, but just to reiterate the point, we've written to all the state, commonwealth and government agencies. We've written to local councils, conservation groups, businesses, traditional owners, and we have started to engage with individual fishers, and we try not to spam all fishers. There are lots of fishermen, both recreational and commercial. We do try and take our time to identify the people that have historically fished in the area, and so we don't unnecessarily contact every fisher. And we're really looking for the ones that are relevant to our activity. Over the course of March, we have also placed notice in print media, so they've gone out. We're working with radio stations at the moment to get some radio adverts together. And we have met with a number of the peak industry associations, and particularly for fishers in this area. We've also heard from WAFIC and the Western Rock Lobster Council that we should be writing to the professional fishing associations. So we've done that, and we'll be looking to set meetings up in April and May with those professional fishing associations throughout the Western Australian coast here. We still are looking for some location-based feedback from folks. So if there are particular spots that are sensitive or that you're particularly concerned about, or any environmental knowledge that you might have about the area you'd like to share with us, there is an interactive map on the website that allows you to do this. We have had our first comments on the map throughout March, which is fantastic. And all of those comments and the conversation and discussion around those comments can be seen online. It is also an opportunity for you to raise any concerns. So if you have particular concerns in the area, then please flag those on the interactive map. We do acknowledge we've had a number of community objections to petroleum development in the area, and this is quite something that we expect and do encounter a lot, and we fully acknowledge and appreciate that is a view that many of the community hold. And our job really is to listen to that and to make sure that view is shared properly with the regulator. But our experience is that objection to oil and gas can mask substantive issues. So there might be some underlying reason for the objection, and really we don't want to just deal with a blanket objection. We want to reveal the substantive issues that are behind that, and it may be you're a fisherman in the area, or you use that area for windsurfing or some other recreational use. And we need to understand those kind of things, because they are things that we can manage in terms of the environmental impact that we have and the way that we design our activity. Those are things that can be managed. And so we really do want to listen and reveal those concerns and lessen our environmental impact on marine users in the area. So what have we done so far? Just to reiterate, there's a number of things we've done in February. I won't go through those again, but the consultation in March, we have got those 4 weeks of print media advertising. We had 658 unique visitors to the website, which is a great response. It shows people are using the website and engaging with the project. We've continued our social media adverts, and they will continue to try and encourage relevant persons to reveal themselves and come forward. As I mentioned, we've had our first posts on the interactive map, and we've now written to a total of 71 organisations with interests, functions or activities in the region, and identified 57 people for further consultation. As I mentioned, our search for relevant persons continues. This is what happens next. We have some port visits that will commence and some information sessions in May. Those information sessions are likely to be held in Cervantes, Jurien Bay, Dongra, Port Denison, Geraldton, and there's potential also for one up in Kalbarri as well. The advertising will continue. We're going to hand out flyers at large community events that we can get to try and raise awareness. We're going to write to fishers and fishing associations that we have been able to identify as relevant to this activity. And we're hoping to meet with the local councils and local regulators. So do watch the website for updates. The information sessions are currently scheduled for sometime in the week of the 8th of May. You can find out more details about the venues, times and dates that will be announced in the coming weeks. That will be available on our website. In terms of the activity design, we now start to narrow our focus into the active source area and the operational area. These are specific areas that are smaller than our activity planning area, so we can more clearly communicate exactly where we're going to have a footprint. Over the next months, we'll be looking for how we can have the least environmental impact. So we'll be looking at the sensitivity and vulnerability of receptors in the region, the presence absence of those receptors, what the burden of the mitigation measures might be, whether they're avoidance measures or whether they're control measures that we need to put in place to prevent impact. And then, of course, if there are unavoidable impacts, we'll be looking at the trade-offs between receptors. And what I mean by that is, often in environmental management, we find there are a number of receptors that will overlap, both in terms of space and time. And we need to go through the process of trading those off and figuring out what actually would have the least amount of impact that also enables us to have an acceptable level of impact. The assessments in terms of what happens, the environmental assessments in May, as I mentioned earlier, we'll complete and publish the summaries of those assessments for consultation. If there's any independent reports, so we know that there'll be some sound modelling reports that will be done, we'll publish those again for transparency and consultation. And then the control measures and adaptive management plans that we'll put in place to manage impacts, we'll also publish summaries of those, again, for transparency and for consultation. So that concludes the second webinar in the Eureka 3D Marine Seismic Survey webinar series. I've been Matthew Smith. It's been a pleasure to talk to you today, and thank you for the time you've taken in watching this video. If there are any questions, please get in touch on the website or through the contact details therein. The website again is www.eureka3dmss.com.au. And I look forward to seeing you again for webinar 3.